Hey everyone, welcome to Nightmare at 3 a.m. Before we begin, if you enjoy scary stories, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also enjoys that chilling feeling. Also, drop a comment below telling me what time you're watching this. There's always someone watching in the middle of the night, and I love reading your comments. Now, without further delay, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and get ready. Tonight's stories are true, and they might make you think twice before going to sleep. I've always thought fixing old things was better than buying new ones. Maybe out of stubbornness, maybe to save money, or maybe this belief that with enough patience, everything can work again. After retiring from civil engineering, I bought my grandparents' old house in a remote district surrounded by soybean fields and dirt roads. I've spent my summers here ever since. The silence helps me think or forget, depending on the day. The house is large with high ceilings, wooden windows, and frequent creaks that betray its age and moisture. My bedroom is on the ground floor. Upstairs, there are two rooms I keep locked. One of them is where my mother grew up. I've never felt the urge to go in. It's just how she left it. Thin curtains, iron bed, a cloth doll in the corner. I've never seen a reason to open it. Life here is simple. I wake up early, wash my face with cold water from the leaky tap, and make coffee with cinnamon, the way my wife used to like. I still do that even alone, a widower's habit. I read, sweep leaves from the porch, try to finish an old puzzle, and sometimes I talk to myself. Not that I notice at the time. Only when I realize I've just laughed at something I said aloud. On the third week of January, I noticed it for the first time. It was getting dark. I went out to close the front shutters like I always do, and I saw up there, in the window of my mother's old room, a shadow, a figure. Still, the kind of silhouette you catch in your peripheral vision and then aren't sure you really saw. I looked again. Nothing there. I tried laughing it off. Must have been the tree's reflection or the curtain swaying. But deep down, I knew the curtains didn't sway. The window was always shut, always had been. The next day, I made stronger coffee, tried to ignore the uneasy feeling. But that night, when I came back from the porch, there it was again. The same figure, the same stillness. By that point, I was starting to doubt myself. Was I seeing things? Maybe it was the heat or the loneliness. I went upstairs, got the key from my toolbox. The lock turned with some difficulty. The door creaked like it always did. The air inside smelled of eucalyptus and dust. The window was shut, the lock intact. Even so, as a precaution, I screwed down the sides of the window. 3 screws on each side. The kind of thing an engineer does to convince himself that everything has an explanation. I went back downstairs, slept poorly. On the third day, the shadow didn't appear. I thought, great, hallucination solved. But on Friday, while washing dishes, I heard a sharp crack from upstairs, like wood giving way under weight. I ran up. The door to the room was ajar. I would never leave it like that. I'm not the type to forget things like this. Or am I? I don't know anymore. I opened it slowly. The room was untouched, but the window was unlatched. One of the screws lay on the floor. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to explain. Maybe it had loosened over time. Maybe I hadn't tightened it properly, But part of me no longer believed in those theories. I reinforced the lock, placed a wooden beam across it, closed the door with an old padlock. That night, I didn't go upstairs. I stayed in the living room armchair, the TV barely audible. Watched an old interview with Carl Jung. At one point, he says, "We are not haunted by what we see, but by what we refuse to see." I follow that thought. I looked out the living room window. The room upstairs was dark, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was there, as if the darkness was watching me back. I stayed in silence, and silence here is always absolute, even when it isn't. I don't remember if I fell asleep or blacked out. When I came to, it was past 3 in the morning. The air was thick, far too warm for the season. My bones ached, like something in the space around me had shifted out of place. I got up slowly, walked to the kitchen, careful not to make noise. An old habit from when my son still lived with me. I got a glass, drank water straight from the tap. That's when I felt it. The presence. That thing you don't see but weighs on you. That you don't hear but makes everything too quiet. I turned and saw through the kitchen window something standing outside. It wasn't a shadow. It was a figure, still looking in the dark. I froze. I swear I didn't move for 30 seconds. When I finally dared to turn on the kitchen light, it was gone. I ran to the back door. It was locked. I checked every window. Nothing broken. No sign of entry. Morning came, and I was still awake, sitting on the front steps, my eyes burning. I called my sister, asked if I could stay at her place, said it was my blood pressure, the heat. Any excuse? I stayed there 2 weeks. Did I tell her what I saw? Of course not. No one tells. We just keep it inside. When I came back, the house was just as I'd left it. Almost. In my mother's room, the window was open. Again. And on the floor beneath it, a cloth. It was the doll. The one from the corner. It was in the window now. I didn't go up, didn't go in. I turned around, went back to the city, and listed the house for sale. Never spent another night there. Weeks later, my sister called, said a car stopped in front of the house. A man got out, took a photo, and just stood there looking up at the upstairs window. He waved at you, she said, like he knew you were watching. I never spoke about it again. But I think about it. I think a lot. Maybe the mistake was going in, or maybe believing someone would come out. Like my grandfather used to say, some things only exist once you open the door. I always thought old age would bring peace, time to read, tend orchids, listen to music on low volume, and watch the world with a cup of tea in hand. Foolish thought. Old age doesn't bring peace. It only silences the external noise. The internal one gets louder. I retired from the municipal library at 71, took with me a copy of the key to the old newspaper room as a keepsake, and moved into this ground floor house in a residential neighborhood where everyone seems to sleep far too early. The house is comfortable, simple as it should be, with a large window facing the street. That's where I spend my mornings and part of the afternoon watering orchids and filling in crosswords. I see the same people, the mailman, the lady with the blue beetle, the boy with the crooked bicycle wheel. I like the repetition. It gives me structure. It shields me from the void. But it was on a Sunday that everything started to change. It was late afternoon, the orange sky reflected in the glass, and he appeared, a man standing across the street, He wore a brown coat, the kind with old buttons. He was motionless, staring this way, not at the street, not at the horizon, at my window. At first, I thought he was waiting for a ride, or lost. I didn't give it much thought. But the next Sunday, he was there again. Same place, same coat, same stillness. By the third time, I started noting the time, 5:42 p.m. sharp. He stared fixedly, didn't move, didn't even seem to blink. He looked like a mannequin placed there just to unnerve me. I considered calling someone. But who? Who do you call when the threat is a still figure outside doing nothing? Back in the library, I read a lot about passive surveillance, the kind of presence that doesn't invade but destabilizes. As Franz Kafka said, the nightmare reveals the truth of the waking world. I follow that thought. On the fourth week, I decided to go out. I opened the gate firmly, pretended I was going for a walk, but he wasn't there. I looked around. Nothing. When I came back, the living room door was ajar. I was sure I'd locked it. I checked everything. Nothing out of place. But the smell, there was a sweet scent, like old varnish mixed with lavender, and a chill despite the strong sun outside, as if something had entered and left the door to the past open. Since then, I've avoided looking out the window, but sometimes I catch his reflection in the glass, and I don't know if he's outside or in. That night, I dreamed of the library. It was empty. All the shelves had vanished, except the one with old newspapers. Someone was flipping through an edition from 1964, and I knew, without seeing, it was him. I woke up with cold feet and the scent of lavender still in the air. The next morning, I decided to dig through one of the boxes where I'd stored old photos, letters, and documents. Among them, a black and white image. A school group, I think from my father's class. The back read, "Field trip to the park, 1947. My eyes froze on a detail. He was there, same coat, same face, same direct gaze into the camera. I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's always been watching me, but I know I recognized him, and he recognized me. I went to the orchid greenhouse, pulled up the plants, emptied the pots, dug through the soil, looking for, I don't know what, a name, a clue, an answer. I found only an old ring that didn't belong to me. I went back to the living room, sat down, and waited. At 5:42 p.m., he was there, but now, closer, inside the gate. I don't know if he wants to come in or if he already has. Maybe old age doesn't bring peace because there's no way to make peace with what stayed out there, or worse, with what stayed, waiting for you to open the door. I often say the house is too big for just me and Tobias, my dog, a black Labrador, old and half-deaf, but still fierce when he needs to be. I moved here after taking leave from the school. Burnout, they said. But the truth is something else. Silence made me hear things that had long been buried under the noise of children, hallways, and tests. The neighborhood is simple, with spaced out houses and low walls. Here, the dogs are the real guards. Humans just go through the motions. I spend my days tending the garden, trying to sleep better, and replying to messages I never sent. Tobias sleeps on the kitchen mat. At night, he watches the yard. It was on a Tuesday when he started barking in a strange way, not a warning bark. A low, intermittent sound like he was trying to push something away he couldn't understand. I went to the gate. Nothing. No car, no neighbor, no cat. Wednesday, same bark. Thursday, too. Always at the same time. 2:18 a.m. Exactly. I wrote it down. I needed to organize it, make it feel logical. But every time I opened the window and looked, there was nothing. Until one night, Tobias started digging under the wall. He had never done that. When I went out to stop him, I saw he was trembling, whimpering, and what I saw made my stomach turn. He wasn't looking outside. He was looking into the yard. I followed his gaze. Behind the lemon tree, something moved. I saw no shape, no face, just movement, as if someone was there waiting. I went back inside, locked everything, slept with Tobias beside my bed. He smelled of grass and fear. The next morning, I found an envelope at the gate. No sender. Inside, a handwritten note. It wasn't the dog I wanted to scare. Since that night, Tobias stopped barking, not because he was calm. It's like he knew it wouldn't help anymore. At exactly 2:18 a.m., he curls up, stays under the table, staring at the laundry room window, and I do the same. I started leaving the lights on, every room. But there's always a shadow where there shouldn't be, always a muffled sound at the gate. I started believing someone was walking through the yard, barefoot, slowly. I installed a camera, just a simple home security one, set it up on a back porch. When I reviewed the footage from the next night, my blood froze. At 2:18, the image shakes, a dry crack. Then for 1 second, a figure appears, someone looking directly at the lens and smiling. The next day, the camera was gone. I wanted to leave, go to a friend's place. But something told me if I left, I wouldn't return. And part of me wanted to know. The next night, I left the kitchen door slightly open. Tobias whimpered. I stayed awake, too afraid to look, but I could feel it. The smell of damp earth, the sound of footsteps, the breathing of someone who shouldn't be there. When morning came, the door was wide open. On the floor near Tobias's bowl, there was a stone. Underneath it, a new note. You heard me now. I thought of reporting it, of checking into a hospital, of running. But I stayed. As Emily Dickinson said, fear is the regret for what hasn't happened yet. I follow that thought. Maybe the mistake was thinking he wanted to come in. Maybe all he wanted was to be noticed. I've always had the habit of working late. I'm an IT technician, the kind who fixes printers over video calls and restarts servers in the middle of the night. After the divorce, I rented an apartment on the 5th floor of an old building downtown. Quiet, thick walls, no nosy superintendent. It was everything I wanted. Peace, a place to keep to myself. But there's a problem with living alone. You notice too much. Noises, lights, clocks that lag half a second, things that used to be background noise become data. Information, alerts. My floor has 3 apartments. 501, mine. 502, where I've never seen anyone go in or out. And 503, which was vacant. The stairs are bare concrete, the hallway always dim, lit by a single yellow bulb hanging from exposed wires. At first I found it cozy, like a place outside of time. By the 3rd week, I noticed someone walking out there. Always around 2:30 in the morning, dry, slow footsteps, hard-soled shoes. I never heard the door to 502 open, never heard the elevator, just the steps. Going to the end of the hall, stopping, returning, always the same rhythm. And always when I turned off the living room light. On the 4th night, I waited, turned the lights off at 2:25. 5 minutes later, footsteps. The same, as if someone knew, as if they were listening from outside, but I hadn't made a sound. I went to the door, looked through the peephole. Nothing, no movement, no shadow, but the steps continued. And then they stopped right outside my door. I stood there for minutes, holding my breath. I could hear breathing on the other side, long, controlled, as if it were part of a ritual. When I finally gathered the courage to speak anything, the breathing stopped. Footsteps again, walking away. The next night, I installed a motion sensor, a simple camera linked to my phone. I set it to record anything that passed through the hallway. At exactly 2:30 a.m., I got the alert. The video showed an empty corridor, but the microphone picked up the footsteps, clear, rhythmic. In the second recording the next night, there was interference, a quick blur, almost imperceptible. The sensor froze for 2 seconds. When it came back, the image was the same, but one new detail. The yellow ceiling light flickered, as if someone had passed underneath it. That's when I noticed. There were 4 doors in the video. I rewound it, frame by frame. In the moment of the blur between 501 and 503, a door appeared. Plain, dark wood, no number. When I played the video forward, it was gone. I went downstairs the next morning to check. Only 3 doors. As always, I recorded again. Nothing. But at night, when the footsteps returned, the door appeared on video, always in the same spot, and always closed. On Saturday night, I waited, sat on the couch with the lights off, phone in hand. At 2:29, the footsteps. I stood up slowly, approached the door. Peephole, darkness. But someone was there. I could feel it. The wood seemed to absorb the air between us. A knock, not loud but sharp, just one. I held my breath. The doorknob turned. Didn't open, just turned. Slowly, deliberately, like someone who knew they were being heard. I spoke out loud. Is someone there? Silence. The footsteps moved away. When I looked again through the peephole, the hallway light was flickering. The camera had recorded the extra door again, and for the first time, it was ajar. I thought about calling someone, but who? The police? A friend? No one would understand. Not even I understood. The next day, I asked the old doorman, Jorge, if the floor ever had 4 apartments. He laughed, said the layout hadn't changed since 1972. But before I left, he added, oh, but there was a tenant on the 5th who really lost it. Kept saying there were people living in the walls, vanished without a trace, left everything behind. I think he was from 502. I went back up and checked the camera. At 2:30 that night, no image, no sound, not even ambient noise. The video was just silence. And in the middle of that void, a whisper, deep, slow, repeated 3 times. Open the door, open the door, open the door. That night, I slept with an umbrella next to the bed, as if a piece of plastic and metal could protect me. I didn't open the door, not yet. As Italo Calvino once said, everything that happens is also what could have not happened. I follow that thought, but sometimes I wonder, what if it already happened and I'm the one who's late? Someone is out there. I don't know what they want, but they're waiting for me to open it. If you made it this far, then some part of you knows. Not all trails end when the path runs out. And for that, thank you for listening all the way through. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It helps this project grow and keeps the stories coming. And now, I want to hear from you. Which story hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. The woods may forget your footsteps, but those who listen never forget the sound. I'll see you in the next episode.